Welcome to this video for D100 Dungeon. So in this video what we're going to be doing is we're going to be making some cards from the spell cards print and play found on Drive-Thru RPG, but the same will apply to the cards that are found in the mapping game print and play files that's also available on Drive-Thru. So the same technique can be applied to both, but for now we're going to just use the dungeon spell cards. And although there's many different ways you can make up these cards, these are the best ways that I've managed to figure out and follow instructions from other print and players over the years as to how to best get some reasonable results for your gaming cards. So the first thing I've done is I've set the page to a single view, and I've shrunk it so that we get one page in the screen. You can do that via the view option, page display, single view, and then just use the plus and minus zoom controls to zoom in and out if you're not familiar with how this works. So I'm using Adobe Acrobat Reader. So right, the next thing is we're going to look at the pages we're going to print. So we're going to look at page 1, and we're going to print the front of page 1, and we're going to print the back of page 1, and we're going to tell the printer to do it double-sided printing and let it automatically feed the pages. If you haven't got that facility on your printer, then I would recommend printing this page first, turning the page over, inserting it into the printer, and then printing the back to the back of the paper. I'll discuss the type of paper that we're using a bit later on, but for now it's a double-sided photo quality paper that I'm printing to. So the other thing I'd bear in mind at this stage is to reference page 1 begins actually on page 2 of the document, because we had an intro here. So we're going to be printing page 2 and page 3. And now we're going to the print options. So selecting the print options, we're going to set those pages to page 2 to 3 and hit tab on the keyboard to accept that. And now you can see that in the preview we've got those 2 pages. The next thing is to make sure it's printing actual size. If we tell it to fit, it's going to shrink to the type of paper that we're using. So I'm going to set it to actual size so that we end up with cards of the actual size of the document. And next we're going to click on properties. I'm using an Epson XP 8500 series printer. All these property settings are going to be different depending on the printer you're using, and this is where we're going to select two-sided printing. So we're going to print auto, allowing the printer to draw the paper in and turn it over and reprint itself without doing it manually. So we're going to select auto, and we're going to print along the long edge, which is this edge along here shown in the orange. If we selected the short edge, then it shows at the top there that it's going to turn the page that way, which we don't want to do. So we're going to select that to the long edge, and it comes up with a warning telling you to set the print density, and again this is going to vary on whichever printer you're using. So in this particular instance I'm going to have to select and tell it to print with text with photos, because we can see there's lots of colour on the image there and there's lots of text, so we're going to set that to text with photos. And then it's just a case of selecting your paper and where it's all the general printer settings anyway, and I'm going to leave it on high so we get a good quality print, and then just click OK. Just preview the settings, make sure they haven't changed, and then we can print. And so what I'll do is I'll go ahead and print off 2 or 3 pages, and then take us to the table where we're going to start compiling the start actually making the cards, and there's two different techniques that we're going to be discussing. Okay, so to the table, here we go.
Okay, so at the table what we've got is we've got printed sheets, got two of these. We're going to do one sheet, we're going to use and sleeve the cards. So we're going to cut them out and we're going to sleeve them. We're going to use these sleeves, and a lot of people sleeve cards these days to play games, and if you're going to sleeve your cards you might as well use this method. The other method is to laminate the cards, and what we'll do is we'll put a sheet into, in a minute we'll put a sheet into one of these laminate pockets, and then we'll laminate it and cut them out that way. The paper that I've used to print these on is a photo double-sided paper. It's 130 GSM. These are A4 sheets. The document is actually for the American US letter size paper. Right, so we've got these pages here. If you're going to do sleeved option, you could get away with them with this thickness paper. Otherwise, go for something a bit slightly thicker, and then it'll be a bit more sturdier. But they're not too bad. Depending on the quality of the sleeve, if you get quite a thick sleeve, it'll thicken the card up as well. So all we really need to do is to really slice these out, and what I do is I use a knife like this, quite a chunky knife. It's uses a standard sort of blade, which is fairly cheap, and I use a steel rule. So we cut them out with a steel rule so that any cutting of the knife isn't going to chip away plastic or wood if you try to use a wooden ruler. So some sort of steel rule and a sharp knife, and we've got a cutting block to cut them on. And the important thing to do is on these sheets there's a very fine print cut line, and what we want to do is we want to cut them in such a way that the ruler is going to guide the knife, and we're going to end up cutting away the dotted line. So I'll do a bit of a close-up of that, get it set, and we'll zoom in. So our intention is to get as close to that line as we can, but we want to lose it. We don't want it visible on the card when it's finally cut. We line it up, and then using the knife slice it away, and then we get a nice edge for our cards. So what we do is we cut out one card in this demonstration, and then I'll show you the next step. So quickly cut this one out. Being careful to zoom back out so we can see what we're doing. Being careful to just remove that dotted line from the card. Okay, so we've got one card now, and then the next step is to round these corners off, and you can buy these devices which are corner rounders. This is a fairly cheap one, it cost me about £4 or £5, might have even been cheaper than that, but there's not a lot of money to them. And you just slot you can get them from craft shops, just slide it in up against the guides, punch, and you get a radius corner. I think this one's probably a 10mm radius on the edge. You can get them smaller, you can probably get them bigger, but 10mm is ideal. And we just go round and round the corners. Oops, missed that one. And then you end up with your card, and it's just a case of popping it into a sleeve. Put it around the other way so the so that foil is on the back of the card, and there you go. And then what you can do is, if you we'll cut all these others out, and then we'll do a comparison at the end of the video of all the different types that we've done. So next we're going to move on to the laminated cards. Okay, so the laminator that I'm using is a Rexel LV250. It's a very old model. I've had it for a great number of years, and it's basically a laminator. You've got a thickness setting here. Select the size of the paper that you're going to be using. I always like to have it quite high up setting, and we need to wait for this light here to go green to tell us that we're ready to start laminating. So I'll just pop that to one side, and then we'll just pocket up our laminating pages. So I'm UK, so I'm using A4. I'm guessing probably in America you'll be using US letter size. Ours are slightly longer pages than the American ones, but slightly narrower, I think. So same principle, take your printed card, printed sheet of paper, pop it in the sleeve. Everybody's probably seen laminating, it's not really rocket science. It doesn't even really matter if all the edges are completely sealed, because we're going to be slicing these out anyway. So once you've got your page in the laminated pocket, some laminators will come with a thing like this to put that in, which is what this model comes with. I think it really helps stop glue, the glue of the laminated pages getting trapped in your rollers. So just pop that in, and then I always give it a smooth out just to make sure there's no little creases or bubbles in the laminated pouch. And as soon as that green light comes on, we're good to go. I'll put that back onto there, and then we can run it through. Okay, so we've now got the green light, and we can start rolling this through the roller. So I always do it twice. I always keep it at a fairly high setting. That setting is controlling probably the amount of heat that's going through the rollers, which in turn is going to heat up the glue that's on the laminated pouch and melt it. So run it through twice. I always flip it over as well. I run it through once that way, and then I turn it over and run it back through that way. It doesn't really make an awful lot of difference, but if there was any warping through the heat, by running it back through the opposite way, it should counter any warping that occurred on the first pass. Okay. When it stops moving, we know we can turn it over. Right. Okay, first pass, turn it over and run it through again. And when we've got to that stage, it's basically a case of just slicing them out in exactly the same way that we did the previous demonstration, where we was just sleeving them. Okay. Right, so we've now done the laminating. Just put that to one side. See how we come out. Okay, so there's our laminated sheet, and now what we're going to do is go through exactly the same process as before. We're going to slice out each individual card using the ruler and the blade. Another alternative you could use are these contraptions, these paper cutters. You line them up to the edge and you use one of these slicers. Never been a fan of these for accurate cutting. It always seems a bit hit and miss unless your cut lines go to the extreme edges, it always seems a bit difficult to line up the edge completely, so I always go for the long-winded way and using the knife and so forth. So I'll just cut through those and we'll cut out a card and see how we get on with that. When you're doing a full sheet, it's always best to get as many of the longer cuts done as possible, so that you can avoid having to keep doing a lot of cutting. So you can see that's probably going to be the next longest cut. And of course, the more accurate you are with your cutting, the more consistent the sizes of your cards are going to be to each other. Okay, so cutting the corners exactly the same as before. Pop them into your cutter and line them up with the edges and radius your corners. Okay, so we've done a few of them, and as you can see, oops, they've all come out fairly decent. Okay, so what I've done is I've laid out the different cards. The top ones are the laminate ones. The middle ones are the sleeved ones. We cut out of just the paper stock and sleeved them. And these ones are the actual ones from the Game Cratfer edition that is pre-manufactured. So you see there's not really an awful lot of difference between them. I'll try and show a close-up. Probably better colour on the actual Game Cratfer one. That's probably to do with the printer and the printer settings. I probably could have set the printer settings to a photo quality paper rather than leaving it on plain to get a better result, but I'm quite happy with that one. And so yeah, I think all in all, the print and play version, you're going to end up with a reasonably good product at the end of the day. Certainly a nice one that you can play the game with. In the next video that we're going to be doing, we're going to be going over some of the other components that are in the mapping game. We're not going to touch on cards anymore because this video really covers the card aspect, but we're going to be dealing with things like these counters, double-sided counters, and how best to make those. In the print and play version of the game, these are square, so there's no round cutting to be done. And there's these thicker tiles that we're going to make. So I'll do a bit of a demo of making them, and we'll do that in another video. So stay tuned, and thanks for watching. Bye for now.